The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the abandoned mining shack, turning the air thick and suffocating. Inside, chained to a rusted iron post, Elena Morales had long stopped screaming for help. 3 days without water had reduced her voice to a whisper, her lips cracked and bleeding. The chains around her wrists had rubbed the skin raw, and dried blood stained the metal links. Her husband, former husband, she corrected herself bitterly, had left her here to die. A punishment, he'd called it, for refusing to sign over her father's land deed. Miguel had always been cruel, but she'd never imagined this kind of evil. The dehydration made her thoughts drift between consciousness and fevered dreams. In one moment, she saw her mother's face. In the next, she prepared herself for death. Before we continue with Elena's story, I'd love to ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the From Wild West channel and give this video a like. Your support truly matters and motivates us to bring you more quality content like this. I'm curious, where are you listening to this story right now? At home? During your commute? Let us know in the comments. The sound of hoofbeats outside the shack made her lift her head weakly. More bandits? Had Miguel sent someone to finish the job? She tried to speak, but managed only a dry rasp. The door crashed open, flooding the dark space with blinding sunlight. Elena squinted against the brightness, making out only a massive silhouette in the doorway. Jesus Christ, a deep voice breathed. Boots thudded across the wooden floor. The man dropped to one knee beside her, and as her eyes adjusted, Elena found herself staring into the most striking blue eyes she'd ever seen, the color of mountain lakes at dawn. His face was weathered and strong, with a square jaw darkened by several days' stubble. A black hat shadowed features that might have been carved from granite. "Who did this to you?" His voice was rough, with barely contained fury. Elena tried to answer, but her throat wouldn't cooperate. The man, she noticed the rancher's brand on his leather vest, immediately uncapped his canteen. "Easy now," he murmured, supporting her head with one large hand. Just small sips. The water touched her lips like a benediction. She drank greedily until he gently pulled the canteen away. "Not too much at once. You'll make yourself sick." He examined the chains, his jaw tightening. "These have been on for days." He pulled a set of bolt cutters from his saddlebag. Why did a rancher carry bolt cutters? And position them on the chain? The metal groaned and finally snapped. As the weight fell away from her wrists, Elena nearly sobbed with relief. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried and immediately collapsed. He caught her before she hit the ground, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing. Through her delirium, Elena noticed the strength in his arms, the width of his chest, the way he cradled her against him like she was something precious, rather than a half-dead stranger. "I've got you," he said quietly. "You're safe now." Elena let her eyes close, surrendering to the first moment of safety she'd felt in years. She woke in a real bed, between clean sheets that smelled of sage and sunshine. For a moment, Elena thought she'd died and found herself in some version of heaven. Then pain reminded her she was very much alive. Her wrists throbbed where the chains had been. Her throat felt like sandpaper, and every muscle ached. "You're awake." Elena turned her head to find the rancher sitting in a chair beside the bed, his hat resting on his knee. In the lamplight, she could see him more clearly, perhaps 32 or 33, with strong features and those remarkable blue eyes. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar. A scar ran through his left eyebrow. "Where am I?" Her voice came out as a croak. "My ranch, the Double T, about 15 miles north of Tombstone." He poured water into a cup and helped her sit up to drink. "I'm Thomas Brennan. Most folks call me Tom." "Elena Morales." She paused. "Thank you for saving my life." Tom's expression darkened. "Who chained you in that shack?" The memories flooded back, and Elena felt her hands begin to tremble. Tom noticed immediately and set the cup aside, his large hands carefully steadying hers. "You don't have to tell me now," he said gently. "But when you're ready, I need to know. Because whoever did this is going to answer for it." Something in his tone, the absolute certainty, the controlled rage on her behalf, made Elena's eyes sting with tears. She'd been married to Miguel for 2 years, and he'd never once looked at her with this kind of protective fury. "My husband," she whispered. "Miguel Cortez. I refused to sign over my father's land, so he—" Her voice broke. Tom's jaw clenched so hard she could see the muscle jumping. "He's not your husband anymore. A man who'd do that to a woman forfeits any claim to her." "The law might disagree," Elena said bitterly. "Then the law's wrong." Tom stood and moved to the window, his broad shoulders tense. When he turned back, his expression had softened. "You'll stay here until you're strong enough to decide what comes next. No one will hurt you on my land. I give you my word on that." "I can't impose." "You're not imposing. I'm offering." His blue eyes held hers. "This ranch is too big for one man anyway. I could use help with cooking and such, if you're willing. Honest work for honest pay. Nothing more unless you want it to be." The careful way he phrased it, ensuring she knew there were no expectations, no obligations beyond what she chose, it made something tight in Elena's chest begin to loosen. "I'm a good cook," she said quietly. The corner of Tom's mouth lifted in what might have been a smile. "Then we have ourselves an arrangement." The doctor came the next day, a kind older man named Dr. Hackett, who cleaned and bandaged Elena's wrists and pronounced her otherwise healthy, just severely dehydrated and malnourished. "She needs rest, good food, and time," Dr. Hackett told Tom as they stood on the porch. "The physical wounds will heal. The other kind take longer." Tom nodded grimly. After the doctor left, he spent the afternoon in his workshop, building something Elena couldn't quite see from her window. Later, he brought her a tray with beef stew, fresh bread, and apple preserves. "Made the stew this morning," he admitted, setting the tray on her lap. "It's probably terrible. I'm looking forward to eating food that actually tastes good once you're up and around." Elena took a bite and smiled despite everything. "It's not terrible, just aggressively seasoned." Tom actually laughed, a warm, rusty sound that suggested he didn't do it often. "That's a kind way of saying I use too much pepper." "Maybe a little," Elena conceded. He sat in the chair again, and they ate in comfortable silence. Elena studied him covertly, the way his large hands handled the spoon with surprising delicacy, the slight graying at his temples, the weariness around his eyes that spoke of loss. "Do you live here alone?" she asked. "For 3 years now. My wife Sarah died in childbirth." His voice was matter-of-fact, but Elena heard the old pain underneath. "The baby, too. After that, I kept to myself mostly. Easier that way." "I'm sorry," Elena said softly. Tom met her eyes. "Life out here is hard. We do what we must to survive it." He paused. "What made you marry a man like Cortez?" Elena set down her spoon, the appetite she'd briefly found disappearing. "My father died and left debts. Miguel offered to pay them in exchange for marriage. I thought I was being practical. She laughed bitterly. I was 19 and stupid. You were young and trying to survive, Tom corrected. That's not stupid. That's human. The simple kindness in his words nearly undid her. Elena blinked rapidly, refusing to cry in front of this strong, stoic man who'd already seen her at her weakest. Get some rest, Tom said, standing. Morning comes early on a ranch. A week passed. Elena's strength returned gradually, and with it, her determination to prove her worth. She woke before dawn and started with small tasks, feeding the chickens, gathering eggs, preparing breakfast. Tom protested at first, but eventually accepted her help with quiet gratitude. These are the best biscuits I've had in 3 years, he said one morning, reaching for a third one. The trick is using lard, not butter, Elena explained, pleased by his genuine appreciation. My mother taught me. She taught you well. They fell into an easy rhythm. Tom worked the ranch, mending fences, tending cattle, breaking horses, while Elena managed the house. But it was more than a simple working arrangement. Tom made a point of teaching her things she'd need to know. Every woman out here should know how to shoot, he said one afternoon, setting up bottles on the fence. Doesn't matter if you've got a man around or not. You should be able to protect yourself. He showed her how to hold the pistol, how to sight down the barrel, how to squeeze rather than pull the trigger. When she missed the first 3 shots, he stepped behind her, his arms coming around to adjust her grip. Elena's breath caught at the nearness of him, the solid warmth of his chest against her back, the scent of leather and sage that clung to his skin. Steady, he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. Don't anticipate the kick. Just breathe and squeeze. This time, the bottle exploded in a shower of glass. There you go, Tom said, pride evident in his voice. He stepped back, and Elena immediately missed his presence. The nights were hardest. Elena would lie in bed. Tom had insisted she keep the bedroom while he slept in the bunkhouse and replay the day's moments. The way Tom's rare smiles transformed his harsh features. The care he took with injured animals. The respect he showed her in every interaction. Never pushing, never presuming, always waiting for her to set the pace. She was falling in love with him, Elena realized with a mixture of terror and wonder. After Miguel's cruelty, she'd thought herself broken in that way. But Tom was showing her what a good man looked like, and her heart was responding, despite her best efforts to guard it. Tom, for his part, was fighting his own battle. He'd meant what he said about keeping to himself after Sarah's death. Love led to loss, and he couldn't survive that pain again. But Elena was making it impossible to maintain his careful distance. She was beautiful. He'd noticed that immediately, when he'd first gotten the chains off her and truly seen her face. High cheekbones, dark eyes that tilted slightly at the corners, full lips that were starting to smile more often. But it was more than physical beauty. It was her strength, the way she'd endured hell and still found reasons to laugh, the gentle way she handled the ranch animals, the pride she took in her work. He caught himself watching her more and more, the way sunlight caught in her black hair as she hung laundry, the graceful movements of her hands as she kneaded bread, the soft sound of her singing Spanish songs while she worked. One evening, Tom found her in the barn, trying to calm a horse that had gotten spooked by a rattlesnake. The stallion was wild-eyed and dangerous, hooves striking out. Elena stood her ground, speaking in low, soothing Spanish. "Elena, get back!" Tom called, moving forward. She held up one hand, stopping him. "He's just frightened. Give him a moment." Tom watched in amazement as the horse gradually calmed under her steady presence. When it finally let her approach and stroke its neck, she looked back at him with triumphant eyes. "You're a natural," Tom said, genuine admiration in his voice. "My father raised horses before he died. I grew up in barns." Elena smiled. "I'd forgotten how much I missed it." "You could work with the horses here," Tom offered, "if you wanted. I've got 3 that need breaking, and I'm better with cattle than I am with high-strung stallions." "I'd like that," Elena said softly. Their eyes held for a long moment. Tom felt the pull between them, stronger than ever. He wanted to close the distance, to touch her face, to tell her she was the first thing that had made him want to live, rather than just survive since Sarah's death. But Elena had been through too much. She needed time, safety, the freedom to heal. So he stepped back, breaking the moment. "I'll see you at supper," he said, and left before he could do something foolish. 3 weeks after Tom had found her, Elena woke to the sound of shouting. She threw on her robe and rushed to the window to see 3 riders approaching the ranch house. Even at a distance, she recognized Miguel's distinctive gray stallion. Terror seized her throat. She couldn't breathe, couldn't move. The chains, the thirst, the casual cruelty in Miguel's eyes as he locked her in that shack, it all came flooding back. Tom appeared in her doorway, rifle in hand. "Stay inside," he ordered. "No matter what happens, you stay in this house." "Tom!" "I mean it, Elena." His blue eyes were hard as flint. "Let me handle this." She watched from the window, her heart pounding, as Tom stepped onto the porch. Miguel and his 2 men, relatives of his, Elena remembered, reined in their horses. "That's far enough," Tom called out. "State your business." Miguel's handsome face, so deceptively charming, twisted into a sneer. "I'm here for my wife. I know she's here. Someone in town saw you bring in a Mexican woman." "I don't see a wife here," Tom said coldly. "I see a woman you tried to murder. Big difference." "That's my business, not yours," Miguel shot back. "She's my property under the law. You're harboring another man's wife. She's not property, she's a person," Tom said, his voice dropping to a dangerous register that made Elena shiver. "And she's not leaving." Miguel's hand moved toward his gun. "You've got no right." The click of Tom cocking his rifle echoed across the yard. "I've got every right to protect someone on my land. You've got 3 seconds to turn those horses around." "There are 3 of us," one of Miguel's cousins pointed out. "And I've got 16 rounds in this Winchester," Tom replied calmly. "Want to do the math on who comes out ahead?" For a tense moment, no one moved. Then Miguel's eyes shifted to the house, finding Elena in the window. His smile was cruel. "She'll come crawling back," he called out. "Women like her always do. Enjoy my leftovers, gringo." Tom's finger tightened on the trigger, but he held his fire as the 3 men turned their horses. Only when they were out of sight did he lower the rifle and turn to the house. Elena met him at the door. She was shaking, tears streaming down her face, despite her efforts to hold them back. "He's going to keep coming," she whispered. "He won't let this go. I should leave before—" "You're not going anywhere," Tom said firmly. He set the rifle aside and took her trembling hands in his. "You hear me? You're not running, and I'm not letting him take you." "You don't understand. Miguel is—" "I understand perfectly." Tom's blue eyes blazed. "I understand that he's a coward who preys on the vulnerable. I understand that he thinks a piece of paper gives him ownership of you. and I understand that I'll die before I let him hurt you again." The words hung in the air between them, weighted with meaning beyond their surface. Elena looked up at him, this strong man who'd shown her nothing but kindness, and felt something break open inside her chest. "Why?" she whispered. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Tom's jaw worked, and for a moment Elena thought he wouldn't answer. Then, with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with his earlier fury, he reached up and brushed a tear from her cheek. "Because when I found you in that shack," he said quietly, "chained like an animal and left to die, I saw the most beautiful face I'd ever seen. Not because you're physically beautiful, though you are, but because even half dead from thirst, even broken and abandoned, you still had fight in your eyes, still had hope somewhere in you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "I couldn't save Sarah, couldn't save my son, but I could save you. And somewhere along the way, you saved me right back." Elena's breath caught. "Tom, you don't have to say anything," he interrupted. "I know you need time. I know trust doesn't come easy after what you've been through. I'm just asking you to stay. Let me protect you. Let me." He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "Let me prove that not all men are like him." "You already have," Elena said softly. She lifted one hand to touch his face, feeling the rasp of stubble against her palm. "You proved that the day you cut those chains off me and gave me a choice instead of an order." Tom's eyes closed briefly at her touch. When they opened again, they held a vulnerability that took Elena's breath away. "I'm falling in love with you," he admitted, voice rough. "Been fighting it, but that's the truth of it. And if you can't feel the same after what you've been through, I'll understand. You can stay here as long as you need. No expectations, no pressure. But I wanted you to know." Elena's answer was to pull his face down to hers and kiss him. For the heartbeat, Tom froze in surprise. Then he gathered her close, one arm around her waist and the other hand cradling her head, and kissed her back with a hunger that had been building for weeks. Elena melted against him, marveling at the difference. Miguel's kisses had always been taking, possessing. Tom's kiss was giving, questioning, waiting for her response before deepening. She threaded her fingers through his hair and opened to him, answering the question. Tom groaned low in his throat and lifted her, carrying her to the parlor sofa. He sat with her in his lap, never breaking the kiss, his large hands spanning her waist with reverent care. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Tom pressed his forehead to hers. "Tell me if I'm going too fast," he murmured. "Tell me if anything hurts." "I'll stop the second you say." "Don't stop," Elena whispered. Tom kissed her again, softer this time. Then, along her jaw, her throat. Elena gasped at the sensation, her head falling back. His hands remained carefully positioned, never wandering without permission, always respectful, even in passion. "You're so beautiful," he breathed against her skin. "So damn strong. Do you know that?" Elena pulled back to look at him, this man who saw strength where Miguel had seen only weakness to exploit. "I'm learning," she said. "You're teaching me." They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other, exchanging soft kisses and softer words. Outside, the sun climbed higher in the Arizona sky. But inside Tom's house, two wounded souls began the slow process of healing together. The next weeks brought a shift in their relationship. They were openly together now, though Tom continued sleeping in the bunkhouse at Elena's request. She wasn't ready for that final intimacy yet, and he never pushed. But there were stolen kisses in the barn, hands held across the dinner table, Tom's arm around her shoulders as they sat on the porch in the evenings. Elena threw herself into working with the horses. She had a gift for it, Tom realized, watching her gentle a wild mustang that had thrown him twice. She was patient where he was forceful, intuitive where he relied on technique. "You should start your own breeding operation," he suggested one evening. "I've got the land, you've got the skill." "You'd do that?" Elena asked, surprised. "It's your home too now," Tom said simply. "Might as well make it official." He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple gold band with a small turquoise stone. "It was Sarah's," he said quietly, "but she'd want you to have it. She was kind like you are. She'd approve." He took a breath. "Elena Morales, will you marry me? Not because you need protection, or because you've got nowhere else to go, but because I love you, and I want to spend whatever years I've got left making you happy." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Tom Brennan, I'll marry you." He slipped the ring on her finger and kissed her deeply, right there in the barn, with the horses nickering their approval around them. They planned a simple wedding for the following month, giving Elena time to have a dress made in town, and Tom time to make the ranch house more suitable for a wife. He added on to the bedroom, built her a proper workspace for sewing, and commissioned a set of furniture from the local carpenter. Elena had never been happier. She woke each morning, eager for the day ahead, secure in Tom's love and her own growing strength. The nightmares about Miguel came less frequently. Her wrists healed, the scars fading to thin white lines. She should have known the peace wouldn't last. It was a week before the wedding when Miguel struck. Tom had gone to town for supplies, insisting Elena stay home with the ranch hand, an older man named Pete. They were in the barn when 5 riders thundered into the yard. Miguel and 4 men Elena didn't recognize. "Pete, get to the house and grab the rifle," Elena said urgently. But Pete was already drawing his pistol. "Get behind me, Miss Elena." Miguel dismounted, flanked by his men. "I'm done asking nicely," he called out. "You're coming back with me, Elena. Dead or alive, makes no difference to me now. You've embarrassed me for the last time." "The lady's not going anywhere," Pete said. His weathered face set in hard lines. Miguel pulled his gun and shot Pete without hesitation. Elena screamed as the old ranch hand crumpled. She dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her hands to the wound in his chest. But the blood poured through her fingers. "Get her," Miguel ordered. 2 men grabbed Elena, hauling her to her feet. She fought, kicking and scratching, but they were too strong. Miguel backhanded her across the face, snapping her head to the side. "You're mine," he hissed. "You'll always be mine. And after I kill that rancher of yours, I'll make sure you remember it every day for the rest of your miserable life." They tied her hands and threw her across a horse. As they rode away from the ranch, Elena twisted to look back at Pete's body lying in the dirt. Grief and rage warred inside her. Tom had been right. She should have learned to shoot better, should have been more prepared. Now Pete was dead, and Tom would come home to find Tom. They were going to ambush Tom. The thought sent ice through Elena's veins. She had to warn him, had to escape somehow. Miguel was taking her back to his ranch, she realized, probably to the same shack where he'd left her before. But Tom didn't know where Miguel lived, and by the time he tracked them down, it might be too late. They reached Miguel's property at dusk, a rundown ranch that spoke of his preference for drinking and gambling over honest work. Miguel's men dragged Elena into the house and locked her in a back bedroom. Through the walls, she could hear them planning. "He'll come looking for her," Miguel said. Probably tomorrow. We'll be ready. I want the gringo dead. Understand? But make it slow. I want him to suffer. Elena's mind raced. The window in her room was barred, but it overlooked the back of the property. If she could somehow signal Tom when he arrived, give him warning. She searched the room desperately and found a piece of broken mirror in the corner. It wasn't much, but reflected sunlight might catch his attention. She tucked it into her bodice and settled in to wait, praying Tom would be careful. Tom returned to the ranch to find Pete's body and Elena gone. The rage that overtook him was cold and focused, a killing fury that had last seized him during the war. He checked Pete for signs of life, found none, then noted the tracks leading away. 5 horses heading southwest, toward Cortez's ranch. He loaded his rifle, his pistol, and a shotgun. He strapped a knife to his belt and another to his boot. Then he saddled his fastest horse and followed the tracks, his mind playing out scenarios. If Cortez had hurt her, if he'd touched her, Tom forced the thoughts away. He needed to be smart about this, not reckless. He'd survived 4 years of war by being strategic, not hot-headed. Elena needed him thinking clearly. He reached Cortez's ranch around midnight, tying his horse a quarter-mile away and approaching on foot. The house was dark, except for one lamp in what looked like a parlor. Tom circled the property, counting men, 5 total, including Cortez. Then he saw the flash of light from an upstairs window. Quick, deliberate, a signal. Elena. Relief flooded through him, followed immediately by renewed determination. She was alive and alert enough to signal him. That meant he still had time. Tom waited until the early hours before dawn, when guards were drowsiest. Then he moved like a ghost, using skills learned in the war to silently eliminate the 2 men stationed outside. Neither made a sound as they died. He entered through a back window, moving room by room. One more guard asleep in a chair. Tom's knife ended him quickly. That left 2 men upstairs with Elena and Cortez himself. Tom crept up the stairs, testing each board for squeaks. At the top, he saw light under a door at the end of the hall. Male voices inside, arguing over something. He kicked the door open, rifle raised. 2 men inside spun toward him, reaching for their guns. Tom fired twice, dropping them both. The sound brought footsteps running. Cortez appeared in the doorway, pistol drawn. Tom and Miguel fired simultaneously. Tom felt the burn of a bullet grazing his shoulder even as his own shot took Miguel in the chest. The man staggered backward, shock on his face, then collapsed. "Tom!" Elena's voice coming from behind a locked door. Tom holstered his pistol and shot the lock off the door. It swung open to reveal Elena, hands still bound, rushing toward him. He caught her with one arm, using his knife to cut her free, then crushed her against him. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "Did he—" "I'm all right," Elena gasped. "But you're bleeding." Tom looked down at his shoulder, registering the wound for the first time. "It's nothing. Just a graze. We need to go before—" A gunshot rang out. Tom felt the impact, looked down to see blood blooming across his chest. He turned to find Miguel, still alive, propped against the doorframe, smoking gun in his hand. "If I can't have her," Miguel rasped, "neither can you." Tom raised his rifle with the last of his strength and fired. Miguel's head snapped back, and he fell, finally, truly dead. "Tom!" Elena caught him as his legs gave out. They both went down, Elena cradling his head in her lap. No, stay with me. Please, Tom, don't leave me." Elena, he breathed, blood on his lips. I need you to get to town. Get help. I'm not leaving you, she said fiercely, pressing her hands to the wound in his chest. The blood was hot and thick, pulsing between her fingers. I'm never leaving you. Do you hear me? We're together. We're together. Tom's hand came up to touch her face, his fingers trembling. Most beautiful face I ever saw, he whispered. Then his eyes closed and his hand fell away. Elena's scream echoed through the house. She held him, rocked him, pressed her tear-soaked face against his, and begged him to come back to her. The sun rose, and still she held him, refusing to believe he was gone. This man who'd saved her life and taught her to live again. She didn't hear the riders approaching until they were in the house. Dr. Hackett appeared, summoned by someone. Later, she'd learned that Pete had managed to tell a passing cowboy what had happened before he died. The doctor knelt beside them, checked Tom's pulse. He's alive, Dr. Hackett said. Barely. Help me get him onto that bed. Elena's heart restarted. Alive. He was alive. The next hours were a blur of blood and prayers. Dr. Hackett removed the bullet, muttering about how it had missed Tom's heart by inches. He stitched and bandaged, dosed Tom with laudanum for the pain, and finally sat back with an exhausted sigh. He'll live, the doctor pronounced, if infection doesn't set in, and if he rests like he's supposed to, which, knowing Tom Brennan, is a big if. Elena collapsed into a chair, shaking with relief. She stayed by Tom's bedside as they transported him back to his ranch, holding his hand, talking to him even though he couldn't hear her. Don't you dare leave me, she whispered. Not when we're just beginning. I love you, Tom Brennan. Do you hear me? I love you, and you're going to live because we have a life to build together. Tom woke 3 days later to find Elena asleep in the chair beside his bed, her hand clutching his. He squeezed her fingers gently, and her eyes flew open. Tom, she breathed, her face transforming with joy. You're awake. Water, he croaked. She helped him drink, supporting his head with infinite care. When he'd had his fill, he reached up to touch her face. You're all right? He asked. I'm fine. You're the one who nearly died saving me. Worth it, Tom said simply. Elena's eyes filled with tears. Don't say that. Don't ever say that. Your life is worth more than… Hey, Tom interrupted her gently. I didn't mean it like that. I meant having you in my life is worth any risk. But I'm sorry I scared you. She leaned down and kissed him carefully, mindful of his injuries. No more heroics, she whispered against his lips. No promises, Tom murmured back, making her laugh through her tears. His recovery was slow. The shoulder wound healed quickly, but the chest injury kept him bedridden for weeks. Elena appointed herself his nurse, bullying him into taking his medicine, changing his bandages, and keeping him in bed despite his protests that the ranch needed him. The ranch will survive, she said firmly. I hired 2 ranch hands to help out. One of them worked with my father. He knows horses. We'll manage until you're healed. Bossy, Tom observed, but his eyes were warm. You need bossy right now. Elena sat on the edge of the bed and took his hand. Tom, I was so scared when I thought I'd lost you. I know. He pulled her down beside him, wrapping his good arm around her. I'm sorry, but Cortez is dead now. You're safe. We're safe. Together, Elena said softly. Together, Tom agreed. They married 2 months later in a small ceremony at the ranch. Elena wore a simple white dress she'd sewn herself, and Tom wore his best suit, despite the way it pulled at his healing chest. Doc Hackett gave the bride away, and half the town turned out to witness the union of the rancher who'd survived the war and the woman he'd saved from chains. As Tom slipped the turquoise ring on Elena's finger, the same one he'd given her before, he held her eyes and said the words he'd been holding in his heart. "I take you as you are," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled guests. "Strong and beautiful and brave. I promise to protect you, honor you, and love you for all my days. You are not property. You are my partner, my equal, my everything." Elena's vows were equally simple and profound. "I take you as you are," she echoed. "Kind and fierce and true. I promise to stand beside you, build with you, and love you for all my days. You saved my life, Tom Brennan. Now let me spend the rest of it making yours worth living." There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd when they kissed, sealing their promises. The years that followed were good ones. Elena's horse breeding operation flourished, her reputation spreading throughout the territory. She became known for her ability to gentle even the wildest mustangs, and soon ranchers were bringing their problem horses from 3 counties away. Tom expanded the cattle operation, taking on more land and more responsibility. But he always made time for Elena, whether it was morning coffee on the porch before the day's work began, or evening rides across their property as the sun set. They had 3 children, 2 daughters and a son, who grew up knowing their mother's strength and their father's kindness. Elena taught them all to ride and shoot, to be self-sufficient and brave. Tom taught them to be fair, to protect those weaker than themselves, to build rather than destroy. On quiet evenings, when the children were asleep and the ranch was peaceful, Tom and Elena would sit on their porch and remember the abandoned shack where they'd met. Remember the chains that had bound her and the choice he'd offered. Remember the moment when love had transformed from possibility into certainty. "Do you ever regret it?" Elena asked one such evening. Her head on Tom's shoulder. "Taking me in? Fighting for me?" Tom looked down at her. This woman who'd given him back his life when he thought he'd lost it forever. "Not even for a second," he said. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Elena Brennan." She smiled and kissed him, tasting the truth in his words. "And you saved me," she whispered. "In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," Tom corrected. "That's what love does." And under the vast Arizona sky, with the land they'd built together spreading out around them, they held each other close and counted themselves blessed. 5 years after their wedding, Tom and Elena's ranch had become one of the most prosperous in the territory. The Double T was known not just for quality cattle and horses, but for the partnership that ran it, a marriage of equals that defied the typical conventions of the time. Elena had proven herself not just as a horse trainer, but as a shrewd businesswoman. She'd negotiated contracts with the cavalry, supplying them with well-trained mounts. The money from those contracts had allowed them to purchase the adjoining property, doubling their land holdings. But prosperity brought its own dangers in the Arizona territory. Tom was in the north pasture, checking on the new calves, when he saw the smoke, black and thick, rising from the direction of the house. His heart stopped. He spurred his horse into a gallop, covering the 3 miles in minutes that felt like hours. As he crested the final hill, He could see the barn was ablaze, flames licking toward the sky. But worse, much worse, he could see armed men surrounding the house. Tom counted 6 riders, all wearing the distinctive red bandanas of the Dawson gang. Jack Dawson had been terrorizing ranches across 3 counties for months, burning out families who refused to pay his protection money. Tom had refused 2 weeks ago, and now Dawson had come to make an example. Tom's rifle was back at the house. He had only his pistol and the element of surprise. 6 against 1 were poor odds, but Elena was in that house, probably terrified, and he'd be damned if he'd let anyone hurt her again. He circled wide, coming up behind the barn. The fire was concentrated on one side, deliberate, meant to threaten but not yet destroy. Tom could use that. He dismounted and moved through the smoke, using it as cover to get closer to the house. Inside, Elena had barricaded herself in the bedroom with their daughters, 5-year-old Sarah and 3-year-old Maria. Their son, 2-year-old Tommy, had been napping in the nursery on the other side of the house when the men arrived. Elena had tried to reach him, but been driven back by gunfire. "Mrs. Brennan," Jack Dawson's voice called from outside, "you've got 2 choices. Come out and tell us where your husband keeps his money, or we burn this house down with you and those little girls inside." Elena's hands shook as she loaded Tom's spare rifle. She was a good shot now. Tom had made sure of it. But 6 men against 1 woman with 2 terrified children to protect? The math wasn't in her favor. She could hear Tommy crying from across the house. The sound tore at her heart. Her baby, alone and frightened, and she couldn't get to him. "Mama, I'm scared," Sarah whimpered, clutching her little sister. "I know, sweetheart." Elena tried to keep her voice steady. "But Papa will come. He always comes." "You've got 30 seconds, Dawson called. Elena made a decision. She moved to the window and fired 3 shots in rapid succession, their agreed-upon distress signal that Tom would recognize from anywhere on the property. Then she reloaded and waited, praying he was close enough to hear. Tom heard the shots and knew immediately what they meant. Elena needed him. Now. He sprinted from the barn to the side of the house, using the smoke for cover. One of Dawson's men spotted him and raised his rifle. Tom was faster, dropping him with a single shot. The sound alerted the others. "We've got company, boys," Dawson shouted. "Brennan's here." Gunfire erupted. Tom ducked behind the water trough as bullets splintered the wood around him. He counted shots, waiting for reloading time, then rose and fired twice more. Another man down. 4 left. Inside the house, Elena heard the gunfight and made another choice. She couldn't let Tom face those odds alone. She checked that Sarah had the pistol and knew how to use it. Tom had insisted even the children learn basic gun safety. "Sarah, you're the big sister now," Elena said, gripping her daughter's shoulders. "You keep Maria safe in this room. You don't open this door for anyone but me or Papa. Understand?" "Mama, no!" Sarah's eyes were huge with fear. "I have to help Papa, and I have to get Tommy." Elena kissed both girls fiercely. "I love you. Be brave." She slipped out of the bedroom and moved through the house, staying low. Tommy's cries guided her. She reached the nursery and found him standing in his crib, face red from crying. Elena scooped him up, holding him tight. "Shh, baby. Mama's here." A shadow fell across the doorway. Elena spun, rifle coming up, to find one of Dawson's men blocking her escape. He was young, maybe 20, with a mean smile. "Well, well," he drawled. "Boss said you were pretty. Didn't mention you were a fighter." Elena kept the rifle trained on his chest. Tommy clutched in her other arm. "Get out of my way, or what? You gonna shoot me while holding that baby?" He took a step forward. "I don't think so." He was wrong. Elena shot him in the knee, dropping him. As he fell screaming, she stepped over him and ran for the barricaded bedroom. She could hear Tom still fighting outside, could hear Dawson shouting orders. She got the girls and Tommy into the root cellar beneath the kitchen, a space Tom had reinforced specifically for situations like this. "Stay here," she ordered Sarah. "No matter what you hear, don't come out until Papa or I come get you." Then Elena grabbed her rifle and headed for the front door. Tom had taken cover behind the porch railing, trading shots with the 3 remaining men. He was bleeding from a graze across his ribs, but the injury barely registered. He needed to end this before they decided to just burn the house with his family inside. The front door opened behind him. Tom's heart seized. Had one of them gotten inside? But then Elena's voice said calmly, "On your left." He glanced back to see his wife, rifle raised, face set in determined lines. Despite the danger, pride surged through him. This woman, this incredible woman. "Children?" he asked. "Safe in the cellar." Elena took position beside him, sighting down her barrel. "Let's finish this." They moved as one, years of partnership making them instinctively coordinated. Tom provided covering fire, while Elena took careful aim and dropped one of Dawson's men. The odds were evening. 2 against 3 now. "You're making a mistake, Brennan," Dawson shouted from behind his cover. "I've got 20 men. You kill us, they'll come for revenge." "Then we'll kill them too," Tom shouted back. To Elena, quietly, "Can you hit him from here?" Elena studied the angle. Dawson was behind a water barrel, but she could see part of his shoulder exposed. Maybe it's a difficult shot. "Take your time," Tom said. "I'll keep the other one busy." He rose and fired 3 rapid shots at Dawson's remaining man, who ducked behind the barn. In that moment of distraction, Elena lined up her shot, let out her breath slowly, and squeezed the trigger. Dawson screamed. Elena's bullet had taken him in the shoulder, spinning him out from behind cover. Tom's follow-up shot ended him. The last man, seeing his boss dead, threw down his weapon. "I surrender. Don't shoot." Tom kept his rifle trained on him while Elena collected the man's weapons. They tied him up and locked him in the barn. Then Tom pulled Elena into his arms. "You all right?" he asked, his hands running over her, checking for injuries. "I'm fine. You're bleeding." "It's nothing." Tom kissed her hard. "You were magnificent." "I wasn't going to let them hurt our family," Elena said simply. They put out the barn fire together, then retrieved the children from the cellar. Sarah had followed orders perfectly, keeping her siblings safe and calm. Tom hugged all 3 children close, relief making him shake. "Your mama is a hero," he told them, "bravest woman in the territory." "She learned from the bravest man," Elena countered, smiling through her tears. The sheriff arrived an hour later with a posse, alerted by a ranch hand who'd seen the smoke. He took their prisoner and arranged for the bodies to be removed. The attempted raid made headlines. "Ranch wife stands with husband against Dawson gang." And suddenly, Elena found herself famous. Women from surrounding ranches started visiting, asking her to teach them to shoot, to defend their homes. Elena, seeing a need, started holding classes every Saturday. Tom built a proper shooting range, and soon the Double T became known as a place where women learn to protect themselves. "You're changing things," Tom told her one evening, watching a group of ranch wives practice their aim. "Women around here are starting to see themselves differently because of you." Elena leaned against him. "I'm just teaching them what you taught me. That being vulnerable doesn't mean being weak. That we all have strength inside us if someone gives us permission to find it." Tom pulled her close. "I love you, Elena Brennan. Every day, I thank God I found you in that shack. And I thank God you had bolt cutters," Elena said with a smile. They both laughed, finding joy even in the memory of that terrible day. Because that day had led to this, a life built on love, respect, and partnership. A life worth fighting for. The following spring brought unexpected visitors to the Double T. Tom was working on a new fence line when one of the ranch hands rode up, face pale. "Boss, there's Indians at the house." "About 15 of them." Tom's gut clenched. Relations with the Apache had been tense since the Army's latest campaign. But he'd always tried to deal fairly with the native peoples, trading honestly and respecting their claims to traditional hunting grounds. He rode back to find Elena standing on the porch, their children behind her, facing a group of Apache warriors. Their leader, a man in his 40s with distinctive scars across his chest, held up his hand in the universal gesture of peace. Tom dismounted slowly, making no sudden movements. "I am Tom Brennan," he said. "This is my wife, Elena. You are welcome here as friends if you come in peace." The Apache leader studied him for a long moment. "I am Naish. We come seeking the woman who heals horses." Tom glanced at Elena in surprise. Her reputation had spread further than he'd realized. Elena stepped forward, unafraid. "I work with horses, yes." Naish gestured, and 2 warriors brought forward a beautiful paint mare. Even from a distance, Tom could see the animal was badly injured, a deep gash across her shoulder still bleeding. "The soldiers shot her," Naish said, anger threading through his words. "She carries my son's spirit name. If she dies, it is bad medicine for our people. I have heard the Mexican woman at the Double T can heal any horse. We offer trade, 3 strong horses for her healing." Elena approached the mare carefully, making soft sounds. The paint was wild-eyed with pain, but allowed Elena to examine the wound. It was bad. Infection had already started, but Elena had dealt with worse. "I can try to save her," Elena said, "but it will take weeks of care. She'll need to stay here." Naish's jaw tightened. His people couldn't stay in one place for weeks, not with the army hunting them. But the mare was precious to them. "My wife's word is gold," Tom said quietly. "If she says she'll heal your horse, she will. You can leave warriors here to watch if you don't trust us. We'll feed them and treat them with respect." Naish studied Tom's face, then Elena's. Whatever he saw there satisfied him. "We will leave 2 men. When the mare is healed, we return with payment." Over the next 3 weeks, Elena worked tirelessly to save the paint mare. She cleaned the wound daily, applied poultices her mother had taught her to make, hand-fed the horse when she wouldn't eat. The 2 Apache warriors, both young men named Chato and Victorio, watched everything she did. They didn't speak English at first, maintaining a stoic silence. But gradually, as they saw Elena's genuine care for their horse, they began to open up. Elena learned that the mare, whose name translated to sunrise dancing, had been a gift from Victorio's sister to Naish's son. "She is not just a horse," Chato explained in halting English. "She is family." "I understand," Elena said softly. "All horses are family to me too." Tom, meanwhile, found himself learning from the warriors. They taught him tracking techniques he'd never mastered, showed him how to move silently through the desert. In return, he shared his food freely and treated them as honored guests rather than prisoners. On the third week, Sunrise Dancing took her first steps without limping. The wound had healed cleanly, and the horse's spirit had returned. Chato and Victorio's faces broke into genuine smiles. "The Mexican woman has strong medicine," Victorio said. "Neche will want to thank her properly." True to his word, Neche returned with 15 warriors and 3 magnificent horses. Strong, well-trained animals that would improve the Double T's breeding program significantly. But he brought something else, too. A beautifully crafted saddle with intricate beadwork. "For the woman who heals," Neche said, presenting it to Elena. "You have honored our people. We do not forget this." Elena accepted the gift with genuine gratitude. "Your horses are beautiful animals. It was my privilege to help." Neche turned to Tom. "You are different from other white men. You see us as people, not animals. This is rare." He paused. "The soldiers will come again. They always do. If you need sanctuary, if your family needs protection, send word to our camps. We will remember this kindness." After the Apache left, Tom held the saddle, examining the craftsmanship. "You've made powerful allies," he said to Elena. "We made allies," she corrected. "They respected that you treated them with dignity." Tom set down the saddle and pulled her close. "This territory is changing. The old ways are ending. But maybe, if enough people choose kindness over cruelty, the new ways can be better." Elena kissed him. "That's what we're building here. A place where different people can come together, where women are strong and men are kind, where everyone gets a chance to prove their worth." "Quite a legacy," Tom observed. "Our legacy," Elena said. Together, the 7th year of their marriage brought their greatest test yet. Elena discovered she was pregnant again, but this time, something felt different. She was tired all the time, her body aching in ways it hadn't with the previous pregnancies. Doc Hackett confirmed her fears. "You're carrying twins," he said gravely. "At your age, after 3 difficult births already, this is dangerous, Elena. There's a real chance." He stopped, unable to voice what they all knew. Women died in childbirth all the time in the territory. Even strong, healthy women. Elena was 32 now, and twin births were notoriously risky. Tom took the news like a physical blow. That night, holding Elena in their bed, he said quietly, "We could go to San Francisco. Big city doctors, better hospitals. I'll sell every head of cattle if I have to." "The children need stability," Elena argued, "and this ranch needs us. We can't just leave for months." "The hell we can't!" Tom's voice was rough. "Elena, I can't lose you. I won't survive it again." She turned in his arms to face him. "You survived losing Sarah. Barely. And I didn't have 3 children and a ranch depending on me then. If something happens to you—" His voice broke. Elena cupped his face in her hands. "Nothing is going to happen to me. I'm strong. I'm a fighter. You taught me that, remember? I taught you to shoot and ride. I can't teach you how to survive childbirth." "Then we'll figure it out together," Elena said firmly, "like we always do." But as the months passed and Elena's belly swelled, Tom's fear grew. He hovered constantly, barely letting her lift anything heavier than a spoon. He brought in extra help for the ranch and hired a woman from town to help with the children. He even convinced a midwife from Tucson to come stay with them for the last month of the pregnancy. Elena tolerated his overprotectiveness with bemused patience, understanding that it came from love rather than any belief in her weakness. But privately, she was frightened too. Her body felt different this time, strained and exhausted in ways that worried her. She went into labor on a hot August night, 3 weeks earlier than expected. Tom sent for Doc Hackett immediately, but the birth moved fast, too fast. By the time the doctor arrived, Elena was screaming with pain, something wrong that none of them could fix. "The first baby's breech," the midwife said urgently, "and it's too late to turn him." Tom held Elena's hand as she pushed, her face gray with agony. Hours passed. The midwife and doctor worked desperately, their faces grim. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a baby's cry filled the room. "A boy," Doc Hackett announced, handing the infant to the midwife. But the second baby— Elena's scream cut him off. She was hemorrhaging, blood soaking the sheets faster than they could change them. "Get him out of here," the doctor snapped at the midwife, gesturing to Tom. "No," Tom said flatly. "I'm not leaving her." "Tom," Elena gasped, her hand tightening on his. "The babies? Make sure." "You're gonna make sure," Tom said fiercely. "You're gonna live, Elena. You hear me? You're gonna live because I can't do this without you. Our children need their mother. I need my wife. You don't get to leave me. Not now, not ever." He pressed his forehead to hers, tears streaming down his face. "Please, Elena. Please fight. I'm begging you." Elena's eyes fluttered closed. The room spun around her. She could hear Tom's voice, as if from a great distance, calling her back. She thought of her children, Sarah, Maria, little Tommy, the new babies. They needed her. Tom needed her. She reached deep inside herself, finding that core of strength that had survived Miguel's chains, that had stood beside Tom against the Dawson gang, that had built a life from nothing. She bore down and pushed with everything she had left. The second baby, another boy, came in a rush of blood and fluid. Doc Hackett worked frantically to stop Elena's bleeding, while the midwife tended to both infants. "Elena," Tom's voice cracked, "stay with me, please, stay with me." She managed to open her eyes, focusing on his face. Are they?" "Two healthy boys," the midwife said, tears in her own eyes, "both breathing strong." Elena smiled weakly. "Together," she whispered to Tom. "Together," he echoed, pressing kisses to her hand, her wrist, her face. "Always together." Elena's recovery was long and difficult. For 2 weeks, she couldn't get out of bed. Tom moved into the bedroom, sleeping in a chair beside her, waking every time she stirred. He brought her meals, changed her bandages, held her when nightmares of dying and leaving her children made her wake gasping. The ranch hands and neighboring women formed a network of support, bringing food, watching the children, helping with chores. The community the Brennans had built over 7 years came together to carry them through their darkest time. When Elena finally regained her strength enough to sit up and hold both twins, they'd named them Gabriel and Jesse, Tom broke down completely. He buried his face against her shoulder and sobbed, all the fear and stress of the past months pouring out of him. "I thought I'd lost you," he choked out. "I thought God was punishing me, taking you away because I was too happy, because I didn't deserve this much goodness after everything I'd done in the war." Elena held him as tightly as she could with 2 infants in her arms. "You deserve every bit of happiness, Tom Brennan. You've earned it with your kindness and your strength and your love. And I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me." He raised his head, his blue eyes red-rimmed but fierce. Promise me you won't take risks like this again." "I promise," Elena said softly. 5 children is enough, more than enough." Tom kissed her gently, reverently, as if she were something precious and fragile. In that moment, Elena realized something profound. Tom's strength wasn't just in his ability to protect and fight. It was in his capacity to love so deeply that the thought of loss could break him. And her strength wasn't just in her ability to endure pain. It was in choosing every day to keep living fully despite having faced death. "We're going to be all right," she told him. "We're going to be better than all right," Tom corrected, looking at their 5 children. The older 3 crowded around the bed, staring at their new brothers with wonder. "We're going to be extraordinary." 10 years after Tom found Elena in chains, the Double T Ranch had become legendary. Their horse breeding operations supplied cavalry units across 3 territories. Their cattle were prize-winning stock. Their 5 children were growing strong and healthy, each inheriting the best traits of both parents. But the world was changing around them. Arizona was pushing for statehood. The Apache Wars were ending, the old way of life disappearing as reservations expanded and traditional lands shrank. More settlers arrived every month, bringing with them both opportunities and conflicts. One of those conflicts came in the form of Harrison Blackwood, a railroad magnate who wanted to run tracks straight through the Double T. He'd been buying up land and water rights, making offers that seemed generous until you read the fine print that essentially gave him control over the entire region. Tom refused his initial offer. Blackwood didn't take no for an answer. "Mr. Brennan," Blackwood said, sitting in the Double T's parlor like he owned it, "I'm trying to be reasonable, but with or without your cooperation, this railroad is coming through. You can profit from it or be destroyed by it. Your choice." "This land is our children's inheritance," Tom said evenly. "It's not for sale at any price." Blackwood's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've heard you're a man of principle. Admirable. But principles don't feed families or keep roofs over heads. Think about what's best for your wife and children." After Blackwood left, Elena found Tom on the porch, staring out at the land they'd built together. "We've faced worse than railroad barons," she said, sliding her arm around his waist. "Have we?" Tom pulled her close. "Dawson was a thug with a gun. Blackwood has lawyers, politicians, money. He can strangle us legally, make it impossible to sell our cattle or horses. He can divert water sources, buy out our suppliers. So we fight smarter, not harder." Elena turned to face him. "We're not those desperate people anymore, Tom. We have resources, connections, friends. Naiche and his people know this land better than any railroad surveyor. Our neighbors respect us. The women I've trained, half of them are married to men with influence." Tom looked at his wife, this incredible woman who'd transformed from a scared girl in chains to a force of nature. "You're thinking of organizing? I'm thinking we show Blackwood that the people of this territory aren't going to be pushed around." Elena's eyes gleamed. "And I'm thinking we remind him that a railroad needs more than just land. It needs workers, supplies, local cooperation, all things that dry up if he makes enemies of the wrong people." Over the next months, Elena orchestrated a quiet revolution. She held meetings at the Double T, bringing together ranchers, townspeople, and tribal representatives. They formed a coalition to negotiate as a unified group rather than allowing Blackwood to pick them off one by one. Tom, meanwhile, leveraged his war record and reputation to gain an audience with the territorial governor. He presented evidence of Blackwood's predatory practices, his violations of water rights, his attempts to force families from their land. The turning point came when Nietzsche and a delegation of Apache leaders rode into Tombstone and publicly backed the Ranchers' Coalition. The sight of white settlers and Apache united sent a powerful message that the old divisions were breaking down, that a new Arizona was being born. Blackwood, faced with unified opposition and governmental scrutiny, was forced to negotiate in good faith. The railroad would still come through, but on terms that benefited the community rather than destroying it. The Double T kept its land, gained access to shipping routes for their livestock, and secured water rights in perpetuity. The night the agreement was signed, Elena and Tom celebrated on their porch with their children around them. "You did it," Tom said, raising a glass of whiskey to his wife. "You united people who've been enemies for generations." "We did it," Elena corrected. "Your reputation opened doors. Your integrity gave people reason to trust." Young Sarah, now 15 and every bit as headstrong as her mother, spoke up. "Papa, why did you fight so hard? Mr. Blackwood offered a lot of money. We could have been rich." Tom looked at his eldest daughter, then at each of his children in turn. "We are rich. We have land that's ours, work that matters, family we love." Real wealth isn't about money. It's about waking up each day knowing you built something worth building, that you stood for something worth standing for. He pulled Elena close. 15 years ago, I found your mother chained in a shack, left to die. Every choice I've made since then has been about building a life where people like her, people who've been powerless, can become powerful, where the vulnerable can become strong, where anyone willing to work hard and deal honestly has a chance. Maria, 13 and thoughtful, said quietly, "Mama, do you ever think about that day, when Papa found you?" Elena considered the question seriously. "Every day," she admitted, "but not with fear or sadness anymore. I think about it with gratitude, because that terrible day led to all of this." She gestured at the ranch, her family, the life they'd built. Sometimes the worst moments of our lives are doorways to the best. Tom kissed the top of her head. "Wise woman, my wife." "I learned from a wise man," Elena said with a smile. As the sun set over the Arizona desert, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, the Brennan family sat together. They'd survived poverty and violence, childbirth complications, and business threats. They'd built bridges between cultures and fought for what mattered. And through it all, they'd proven that love, real love, built on respect and partnership and choosing each other every single day, could transform not just two lives, but an entire community. "Tell us again how you met," little Jesse asked, now 10 years old. It was his favorite story. Tom and Elena exchanged a look, sharing a smile that held 15 years of memories. "Well," Tom began, "I was riding through the desert when I saw an abandoned shack. And inside, I found the woman who changed my life forever." As he told the story, edited slightly for young ears, Elena watched her husband's face, still handsome at 47, still strong, still kind. She thought about the girl she'd been, desperate and defeated. And she thought about the woman she'd become, powerful and beloved. The chains were long gone. But what they'd forged in their place, this family, this life, this legacy of strength and compassion, would last for generations. Tom reached the part in the story about cutting the chains, and little Gabriel interrupted. "And then you said she had the most beautiful face you'd ever seen." That's right, Tom confirmed, his blue eyes finding Elena's across the porch. And 15 years later, she still does. Elena's heart swelled. Despite the silver threading through her dark hair, despite the lines at the corners of her eyes from years of smiling and squinting into the desert sun, despite the changes time and children had brought to her body, Tom still looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. "I love you," she mouthed silently. "I love you more," he mouthed back. And she laughed, because they'd been having this argument for 15 years, and neither of them was ever going to win. As night fell and stars emerged in the vast Arizona sky, the Brennan family remained on their porch, telling stories and making plans and simply being together. They'd fought for this peace, bled for this happiness, chosen each other through every trial, and they would continue to choose each other every day for all the days to come. Because that's what love was, not a single moment of rescue or romance, but a lifetime of small choices that added up to something extraordinary. Tom Brennan had saved Elena Morales from chains 15 years ago. But the truth was, they'd saved each other, and together, they'd built something that would outlast them both. A legacy of strength, compassion, and the transformative power of choosing love over fear, partnership over power, and hope over despair. The Double T Ranch stood as testament to what two people could build when they refused to give up on each other or on the possibility that tomorrow could be better than today. And under the endless Arizona sky, with their children around them and their land stretching out in every direction, Tom and Elena Brennan knew they'd found something most people only dreamed of: a love worth fighting for, a life worth living, a legacy worth leaving. Together. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Tom and Elena's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.